The lower markets of Nexus Station buzzed with activity as hundreds of different species traded goods from across the galaxy. The air was thick with the smell of exotic spices, fuel vapors, and the metallic scent that came from so many different alien bodies in one place. Holographic signs flickered in dozens of languages, advertising everything from rare minerals to illegal weapons. Zarathis carefully arranged the healing crystals on her family's small table. Each blue and green stone caught the artificial light, casting tiny rainbows across the worn metal surface. Her scaled fingers moved with practiced ease as she positioned each item perfectly. The crystals were good quality, but they were not what made people stop at her stall. The real treasure sat in the center of the display. Her mother's amulet hung from a simple metal stand, its silver surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to move in the light. The amulet was old, older than the station itself, and it was the last thing Zarathis had left of her mother. She touched the torn sleeve of her traditional blue shirt, remembering how her mother had taught her to sew the delicate patterns. Everything else from home was gone now. The war had taken their planet, their family, everything except this one precious piece of jewelry. A shadow fell across her table. Zarathis looked up to see 3 large figures blocking the light from the overhead lamps. The Kreks were easy to recognize with their thick gray skin and rows of sharp teeth. They wore matching black vests that marked them as part of the protection gangs that controlled the lower markets. "Time for your payment, little snake," the largest Krek said. His voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "Boss says the price went up this month." Zarathis kept her voice steady. "I paid last week. The agreement was once per month." The Kreks laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. "Agreements change. Station's getting more dangerous. Need more protection." "I don't have more credits," Zarathis said. It was true. The medical bills from her father's illness had taken almost everything. She barely had enough to buy food, let alone pay the gang's extra money. The second Kreks, smaller but with more scars across his face, leaned forward. "Then maybe you need to find them. Nice little stall like this, would be shame if something happened to it." The third Kreks was already reaching toward the display table. His clawed hand stopped just above the amulet. "This looks valuable. Maybe we take this as payment." "No." Zarathis moved faster than she had ever moved before. She grabbed the Kreks' wrist with both hands, trying to pull it away from the amulet. "You can't take that. It's all I have left." The scarred Kreks backhanded her across the face. The blow sent her stumbling backward, her blue shirt catching on the edge of the table. The fabric tore with a loud ripping sound, leaving her shoulder exposed to the cold station air. "Don't touch what's not yours, snake," the scarred one snarled. The largest Kreks grabbed the amulet, yanking it free from its stand. The metal chain broke with a sharp snap. "This will do nicely. Consider your protection paid for the month." Zarathis felt tears burning her eyes. Around the market, other aliens had stopped to watch, but none of them moved to help. This was how things worked on Nexus Station. The strong took what they wanted from the weak. Everyone knew the rules. "Please," she whispered, holding her torn shirt closed with one hand. "That was my mother's. It's the only thing I have left of her." The Kreks just laughed again. The largest one tossed the amulet to the scarred one, who caught it and shoved it into his vest pocket. "Should have thought of that before you tried to cheat us, little snake." They turned to leave, already talking about where they would sell the amulet. Zarathis sank to her knees beside her overturned table, watching the 3 figures walk away through the crowd. Healing crystals rolled across the metal floor, forgotten. Then someone stepped in front of her. "Are you hurt?" The voice was strange, speaking the common tongue with an accent she didn't recognize. Zarathis looked up to see a human male crouching beside her. He was not very tall, with dark hair and brown eyes that looked worried. His clothes were simple work gear, the kind worn by cargo haulers and ship mechanics. Humans were rare on Nexus Station. Most species thought they were too soft for the harsh realities of space trade. This one looked different, though. There was something in his eyes, something that reminded her of the old warriors from her grandmother's stories. "I'm fine," she said automatically, though her cheek still stung from the blow. The human was already shrugging out of his brown jacket. "Here, take this." He held it out to her. "Your shirt is torn." Zarathis stared at him. In all her years on the station, no one had ever offered to help her after the gangs had taken their payment. Most aliens just walked away quickly, afraid of being associated with victims. "Why?" she asked. The human looked confused. "Why what? Why are you helping me?" "You don't know me. I'm not your species." Something hard flashed in the human's brown eyes. Where I come from, we don't need to know someone to help them. And we definitely don't stand by while thugs hurt innocent people. He helped her to her feet, his hands gentle but strong. The jacket was warm and smelled like engine oil and something else, something clean and safe. Zarathis pulled it around her shoulders, grateful for the covering. "I'm Marcus," the human said. "Marcus Chen, Zarathis." She began picking up the scattered crystals, trying not to cry. "Thank you for the jacket, but you should go. If the Kreks see you helping me, they might cause trouble for you too." Marcus was helping her gather the crystals. "What did they take?" "My mother's amulet." The words came out in a rush. "It was the last thing I had from home. They took it because I couldn't pay extra protection money." Marcus went very still. When he spoke again, his voice was different, colder. "Where did they go?" "It doesn't matter," Zarathis said quickly. "They're connected to the big gangs. No one challenges them. That's just how things work here." Marcus stood up, brushing dust off his hands. He looked around the market, watching the crowd of aliens who were carefully not looking in their direction. "Is that so?" Something in his voice made Zarathis look up at him sharply. "What are you thinking?" Marcus turned back to her and she saw that hard look in his eyes again. "I'm thinking that where I come from, we have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." "You can't be serious," Zarathis said. "They're Kreks. They're stronger than you, and there are 3 of them. Plus they have friends, lots of friends." Marcus was already scanning the crowd, probably looking for the 3 thugs. "Then I guess they're about to learn what happens when they mess with someone under human protection." The way he said it, calm and certain, sent a chill down Zarathis's spine. She had heard stories about humans, about their wars and their stubborn refusal to give up. She had always thought they were just stories. Looking at Marcus now, she realized the stories might be true. Marcus helped Zarathis set her table back up, his movements quick and efficient. Other traders in the market had started to whisper among themselves, pointing at the human who was actually helping a victim of the protection gangs. Most of them looked confused, as if they couldn't understand what he was doing. "You really don't have to do this," Zarathis said for the 3rd time as Marcus handed her the last of the healing crystals. "I know you mean well, but you don't understand how things work here." Marcus straightened up and looked directly at her. "Then explain it to me." Zarathis glanced around nervously, making sure no one was listening too closely. "The Kreks gang controls this section of the market. They have deals with the bigger crime families. If you challenge them, you're not just fighting 3 thugs. You're fighting the whole system. And everyone just accepts this? What choice do we have?" Zarathis spread her hands helplessly. "Most of us are refugees. We came here because we had nowhere else to go. The station authorities don't care what happens in the lower markets as long as the upper levels stay peaceful. We survive by keeping our heads down and paying what we're told to pay." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying the busy market around them. Zarathis watched him, trying to figure out what he was thinking. His face was calm, but she could see something working behind his eyes, like he was solving a puzzle. "Tell me about the amulet," he said finally. Zarathis touched the spot on her chest where it used to hang. "It belonged to my mother and her mother before that. My grandmother said it was made on the old homeworld before the wars scattered my people across the galaxy." "Is it valuable? I mean, besides the personal meaning?" "I don't know. Maybe. My mother always said it held our family's history, but I thought she meant stories and memories." Zarathis shrugged. "The Kreks probably just want to sell it for scrap metal." Marcus nodded slowly. "Where would they go to do that?" "The pawn shops on level 7, most likely. Or maybe they'll take it to one of the black market dealers in the old industrial section." Zarathis grabbed his arm. "But you can't go there. Those places are dangerous even for people who belong in that world." "I've been in dangerous places before," Marcus said quietly. There was something in his voice that made Zarathis study his face more carefully. Now that she looked closer, she could see small scars on his hands and neck. His eyes had the look of someone who had seen violence before, someone who was not afraid of it. "You were a soldier," she said. It wasn't a question. "Earth Defense Force, 5th Marines. Did 3 tours fighting the Centauri Raiders before I got out." Marcus's expression didn't change, but his voice got harder. "I've seen what happens when bullies think they can take whatever they want from people who can't fight back." "This isn't your war," Zarathis said softly. Marcus looked at her again, and she saw something that surprised her. It wasn't anger or hatred in his eyes. It was sadness, mixed with a determination that seemed to burn from somewhere deep inside him. "Maybe it should be," he said. A new voice cut through their conversation. "Well, well." The little snake found herself a pet. They turned to see the scarred Krex approaching with two other gang members Zarathus didn't recognize. The scarred one was twirling her mother's amulet on its broken chain, letting it catch the light as it spun. "I thought you might want to say goodbye to your pretty jewelry before we sell it." The Krex continued. "It's going to buy us some very nice drinks tonight." Marcus stepped slightly in front of Zarathus. The movement was casual, but it put him between her and the three thugs. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said in a conversational tone. The Krex laughed. "Oh, the pet can talk. What kind of misunderstanding, soft skin? The kind where you think you're keeping that amulet." Marcus's voice stayed calm and friendly, which somehow made the words more frightening. "See, the lady here is under my protection now. That means her property is under my protection, too." The largest Krex, the one from before, pushed past his companions. "Your protection? What are you going to do, human? Bleed on us?" "If I have to," Marcus said simply. The casual way he said it made all three Krex pause. Zarathus felt her heart start beating faster. She had never seen anyone talk to the gangs like this, like they were nothing more than schoolyard bullies. "You're crazy," the scarred Krex said, but some of the confidence had gone out of his voice. "Probably," Marcus agreed, "but I'm the kind of crazy that doesn't back down. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to give the lady back her amulet. You're going to apologize for tearing her shirt, and then you're going to find someone else to shake down." The three Krex looked at each other uncertainly. This wasn't how these conversations usually went. People were supposed to be scared of them, not making demands. "And if we don't?" the largest one asked. Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "Then I hunt you down and take it back. And trust me, you really don't want me hunting you." The way he said it, matter of fact and certain, sent a chill through the air. Around them, other traders had stopped what they were doing to watch. Some of them looked excited, as if they were hoping to see the gangs get challenged. Others looked terrified at the thought of what might happen next. "You're one human," the scarred Krex said, trying to sound tough again. "There are dozens of us on this station." "Then I guess it's going to be a busy week for me," Marcus replied. The three Krex backed away slowly, clearly unsure how to handle this strange human who didn't seem to understand that he was supposed to be afraid of them. "This isn't over. Soft skin," the largest one called out as they retreated into the crowd. "Yes, it is," Marcus called back. "You just don't know it yet." When the gang members were gone, Zarathus turned to stare at Marcus. "Are you completely insane? Do you have any idea what you just did?" "I told some bullies to back off," Marcus said, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "Now I need to go get your amulet back. They'll kill you!" Marcus was already checking his pockets, taking inventory of what he had with him. "They'll try." "There's a difference." Zarathus watched him. This strange human who had appeared out of nowhere and turned her world upside down in the space of an hour. She thought about all the times she had watched the gangs take what they wanted, all the times she had kept her head down and hoped they would leave her alone. "I'm coming with you," she said suddenly. Marcus looked up, surprised. "No, you're not. This is going to be dangerous. You know, it's my amulet. My mother's memory. And besides," Zarathus smiled for the first time since the attack, "you don't know your way around the station. You'll need a guide." Marcus studied her face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. But we do this my way. What way is that?" Marcus's smile was sharp and cold. "The way that gets results." Marcus and Zarathus made their way through the crowded corridors of Nexus Station, moving from the busy markets toward the darker, quieter sections where honest traders rarely went. The walls here were older, covered in rust stains and graffiti in a dozen different alien languages. The lighting was dimmer too, with whole sections lit only by the glow of emergency strips. "Tell me about the station layout," Marcus said quietly as they walked. His eyes constantly moved, watching for threats, noting exit routes and potential cover. "It's built in rings," Zarathus explained, keeping her voice low. "The upper levels are where the rich traders and station officials live. The middle levels have the main markets and docks. Down here in the lower levels, you've got the cheap housing, black markets, and gang territory." They passed a group of Zhek traders arguing loudly over a shipment of what looked like stolen electronics. The insectoid aliens clicked their mandibles aggressively at each other, but they fell silent when they saw Marcus. Humans had a reputation for being unpredictable, and most species preferred to avoid them. The industrial section is down on level 9, Zarathis continued. It's mostly abandoned now except for the gangs. They use the old factories as meeting places and storage. Marcus nodded, filing the information away. What about security? Station police patrol down here? Zarathis made a sound that might have been a laugh. The station authorities pretend the lower levels don't exist unless there's a riot or someone important gets killed. As long as the gangs keep their wars quiet and don't interfere with trade on the upper levels, they're left alone. They reached a junction where 3 corridors met. Marcus stopped and pulled Zarathis into the shadow of a broken vending machine. Someone's following us, he said quietly. Zarathis felt her heart skip. How do you know? 2 Kreks staying about 30 meters back. They've been with us since we left the market. Marcus peered around the edge of the machine. Probably sent to keep an eye on us, make sure we don't cause any more trouble. What do we do? Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he smiled that cold smile again. We give them something to report. He led her down the left corridor, moving faster now. The passage here was narrower, with pipes and cables running along the ceiling. The sound of their footsteps echoed off the metal walls. In here, Marcus said, pulling her into a maintenance alcove barely big enough for both of them. The space smelled of grease and ozone from the electrical systems. What are we doing? Zarathis whispered. Teaching our friends a lesson about following people who don't want to be followed. They waited in the darkness, pressed close together in the tiny space. Zarathis could hear Marcus breathing slowly and steadily, completely calm despite what they were about to do. After a few minutes, she heard the sound of heavy footsteps approaching. The 2 Kreks appeared at the mouth of the corridor, moving cautiously. They were different from the ones who had taken the amulet, but they wore the same black vests. Both carried crude metal clubs that looked like they had been made from pieces of broken machinery. Marcus waited until they were almost at the alcove, then stepped out behind them. Looking for someone? He asked pleasantly. The Kreks spun around, raising their weapons, but Marcus was already moving. He grabbed the first one's wrist and twisted hard, causing the alien to drop his club with a roar of pain. At the same time, he kicked the second Kreks in the knee, sending him stumbling into the wall. The fight was over in seconds. Both Kreks were on the ground, groaning and holding injured limbs. Marcus picked up one of the clubs and hefted it experimentally. Now then, he said, his voice still calm and conversational. I'm going to ask you some questions and you're going to give me honest answers. If you lie to me, things are going to get very unpleasant for you. The first Kreks, the one whose wrist Marcus had twisted, glared up at him. We don't tell humans anything. Marcus brought the club down on the alien's foot. Not hard enough to break bones, but hard enough to hurt. The Krek screamed. That was your one free lie, Marcus said. The next one is going to cost you a lot more. Now, where are your friends taking the amulet they stole? Zarathis watched in fascination and horror as Marcus questioned the 2 gang members. She had never seen anyone handle the Krek so easily. They were supposed to be dangerous, feared throughout the lower levels. But Marcus treated them like they were nothing more than common criminals. The pawn shop on level 7, the second Kreks gasped, after Marcus had persuaded him with a few more strategic applications of the club. Gorlag's place. But they won't just sell it. They're waiting for someone to examine it first. Examine it for what? Don't know. Boss said the amulet might be worth more than it looks. Marcus glanced at Zarathis. Did you know about this? She shook her head. I told you, I thought it was just jewelry. Marcus turned back to the injured Kreks. Who's examining it? Some Vorthon tech expert. Supposed to meet them tonight. The Vorthons were known throughout the galaxy for their expertise with ancient technology. If they were interested in her mother's amulet, it meant the piece was more than just a family heirloom. Marcus stood up, tossing the club aside. Thank you for your cooperation. Now I want you to take a message back to your boss. What message? The first Kreks asked sulkily. Tell him that Marcus Chen is coming for the amulet. Tell him that anyone who gets in my way is going to end up like you 2. And tell him that if he hurts the girl's property or anyone else under my protection, I'm going to make his life very, very difficult. The 2 Kreks struggled to their feet and limped away, supporting each other and muttering curses in their own language. Marcus watched them go with satisfaction. They'll warn the others, Zarathis said. Good. I want them worried. Worried people make mistakes. They continued deeper into the station, following the directions the Krex had given them. The corridors here were even more run down, with whole sections where the artificial gravity fluctuated and the air recycling systems made strange humming noises. "Marcus," Zarathus said as they walked, "what if the amulet really is valuable? What if it's worth more than we thought?" "Then we'll figure out what to do with it after we get it back," Marcus replied. "But whatever it is, it belongs to you, not to some gang of thugs." They reached level 7 just as the station's artificial day cycle was ending. The lighting dimmed to simulate evening, and the corridors became even more shadowy. Gorlag's pawn shop was easy to find. It was the only business on the level with any lights on. Through the grimy windows, they could see the 3 Krex from the market talking to a tall, thin alien with purple skin and multiple arms. The Vorthan was examining Zarathus's amulet with some kind of scanning device, his large black eyes intent on the readout. "There," Zarathus whispered, pointing. "That's my mother's amulet." Marcus studied the scene inside the shop. 5 of them now. This is going to be tricky. Maybe we should get help. Find some station security or— "No." Marcus's voice was firm. "This is between us and them. Besides, I'm starting to get the feeling that your amulet is more important than anyone realized. The fewer people who know about it, the better." He was right. Whatever the Vorthan was seeing in his scans, it was making him very excited. The alien's arms moved rapidly as he adjusted his equipment, and he was talking quickly to the Krex leader. "We need to get closer," Marcus said. "I want to hear what they're saying." They crept around to the side of the building where a broken ventilation grate gave them access to the shop's air ducts. The space was cramped and uncomfortable, but it let them get close enough to overhear the conversation inside. "Remarkable," the Vorthan was saying in accented common tongue. "This is not mere jewelry. The metal contains data storage matrices that are thousands of years old. The information density is incredible." "What kind of information?" the scarred Krex asked. "Star charts, navigation data, possibly the location of a lost colony ship. This could be worth millions to the right buyer." Zarathus gasped softly. Marcus put a hand on her arm, warning her to stay quiet. "Millions?" The Krex leader's eyes gleamed with greed. "Then we're not selling to some scrap dealer. We take this to the big bosses, let them handle the auction." "Wise decision," the Vorthan agreed. "I will prepare a full technical report. With this data, someone could find one of the legendary lost ships of the Valari Exodus." Marcus and Zarathus looked at each other in the dim light of the air duct. Her mother's simple amulet was apparently the key to finding a piece of her people's lost history. And now they knew the gang wasn't going to just sell it and forget about it. They were going to take it to the major crime families, which meant that getting it back was going to be much more dangerous than Marcus had originally thought. But looking at his face in the shadows, Zarathus could see that the danger didn't matter to him. He was going to get her amulet back no matter what it took. Marcus and Zarathus spent the next few hours watching the pawn shop from their hiding place in the air ducts. They saw the Vorthan leave with a datapad full of information about the amulet. Then the 3 original Krex were joined by 5 more gang members, all armed with various weapons ranging from energy pistols to crude metal blades. 8 of them now, Marcus whispered as they crawled back through the ventilation system. "They're definitely taking this seriously." "Maybe we should wait," Zarathus suggested. "Find another way." Marcus shook his head. "They're moving the amulet tonight. I heard them talking about taking it to the crime bosses on level 3. Once it gets up there, we'll never see it again." They made their way to the abandoned industrial section on level 9. The old factory complex was perfect for what Marcus had in mind. Lots of machinery to use as cover, multiple levels connected by catwalks and maintenance ladders, and plenty of tools and equipment that could be turned into weapons. "What's your plan?" Zarathus asked as they explored the darkened factory floor. Marcus was examining a pile of mining equipment left behind when the factory closed. "Simple. I'm going to make them come to me, then use this place to even the odds." He picked up a small cylindrical device from the mining gear. "Shaped charge. Miners use these to blast through rock. Should work just fine on metal doors." Zarathus watched nervously as he gathered several more of the charges, along with some electrical components and a roll of industrial cable. "You're going to blow things up?" "Among other things." Marcus's hands moved quickly and efficiently as he worked, setting up what looked like a series of traps throughout the factory. "The trick is to control the battlefield. Make them fight on my terms instead of theirs." "How do you know they'll come here?" Marcus grinned. And for the first time since she'd met him, the expression was genuinely cheerful instead of cold and dangerous. Because I'm going to make them very, very angry. An hour later, Marcus stood in the main corridor outside Gorlag's pawn shop. He had taken off his shirt and used it to make a torch, which he now held in one hand. In the other hand, he carried one of the mining charges with its timer set for 30 seconds. "Hey," he shouted at the shop windows. "You have something that belongs to my friend. I'm here to collect it." The door burst open and all 8 Kreks poured out, weapons ready. The largest one, who seemed to be their leader, pointed a crude energy pistol at Marcus. "You again," the leader snarled. "You should have stayed away, soft skin." "Probably," Marcus agreed. "But I don't really care what I should have done. I care about what I'm going to do." He held up the mining charge so they could all see it. "This is set to go off in 20 seconds. It's powerful enough to take out this entire section of corridor. Unless you want to be pasted on the walls, I suggest you start running." The Kreks looked at each other uncertainly. "You're bluffing," the scarred one said. "You'll die too." "Maybe," Marcus said calmly. 15 seconds, that was enough for them. The Kreks turned and ran toward the nearest emergency stairwell, heading for the industrial section just as Marcus had hoped they would. He waited until they were out of sight, then calmly disarmed the charge and followed them. The factory was dark except for a few emergency lights, casting long shadows across the machinery. Marcus moved through the maze of equipment like a ghost, using every piece of cover and every shadow to his advantage. The Kreks entered the factory cautiously, but they were angry, and that made them careless. They spread out to search for him, which was exactly what Marcus wanted. United, they were too strong for him to face directly. Separated, they became vulnerable. The first one died when he triggered the tripwire Marcus had set up near the loading dock. The mining charge took out a section of catwalk, sending the Kreks tumbling 30 feet to the metal floor below. He hit with a wet thud and didn't get up. 7 left, Marcus said quietly to himself. The second and third ones came together, moving carefully through the machinery on the main floor. Marcus waited until they were directly under one of the overhead cranes, then triggered the explosive charge he had placed on the crane's support cable. 2 tons of metal crashed down on them and they didn't have time to scream. 5 left. The remaining Kreks were getting desperate now. They fired their weapons wildly into the shadows, hoping to hit something. Energy bolts and projectiles ricocheted off the metal surfaces, filling the air with sparks and the smell of burned metal. Marcus used the noise to cover his movement as he worked his way around to their flank. 2 more Kreks were guarding the main entrance, trying to keep him from escaping. He dropped down from an overhead pipe directly behind them, landing silently on the factory floor. The first one never knew what hit him. Marcus grabbed his head and twisted sharply, snapping his neck with a wet crack. The second one started to turn, but Marcus was already moving. A knife hand strike to the throat crushed the alien's windpipe, and he collapsed, choking. 3 left. The remaining Kreks had regrouped near the center of the factory, standing back to back with their weapons ready. The leader, the scarred one, and one other that Marcus didn't recognize. They looked scared now, their earlier confidence completely gone. "Where are you, human?" the leader called out. "Come and face us like a warrior." Marcus stepped out of the shadows about 20 feet away from them, empty-handed and apparently unarmed. "You want to face me?" "Here I am." All 3 Kreks opened fire at once. Energy bolts sizzled through the air where Marcus had been standing, but he was already moving, rolling behind a piece of machinery as the shots went wild. "You missed," he called out cheerfully. The scarred Krek snarled and charged toward Marcus's position, his weapon blazing, but Marcus wasn't there anymore. He had circled around through the machinery and came up behind the other unknown. Kreks. A quick blow to the base of the skull dropped the alien instantly. 2 left. The leader and the scarred one were, the last one standing now. They stood in the center of the factory floor, turning slowly as they tried to spot Marcus in the shadows around them. "This is insane," the scarred one said. His voice was shaking. "He's just one human. How is he doing this?" "Shut up and keep watching," the leader snapped. But his voice didn't sound very confident either. Marcus appeared on a catwalk about 15 feet above them. "You want to know how?" he called down. "It's simple. You fight like bullies. You're used to picking on people who can't fight back. But I can fight back, and I'm very, very good at it." Both Kreks fired up at him, but Marcus was already dropping down from the catwalk. He landed hard on the leader's back, driving the alien to his knees. A quick chokehold and the leader was unconscious. That left only the scarred Krex, who was backing away with his weapon shaking in his hands. "Stay back," he warned. "I'll kill you." "No," Marcus said quietly, walking toward him. "You won't." The Krex fired, but his hands were shaking so badly that the shot went wide. Marcus reached him in 2 quick steps, knocked the weapon from his hands, and grabbed him by the throat. "My friend's amulet," Marcus said calmly. "Where is it?" The scarred Krex's eyes were wide with terror. With shaking hands, he reached into his vest and pulled out the silver amulet. Marcus took it and examined it carefully, making sure it wasn't damaged. "Thank you," he said politely. Then he punched the Krex in the face, knocking him unconscious. Zarathis emerged from her hiding place behind one of the machines, staring at the scene around her. 7 unconscious or dead Krex lay scattered across the factory floor. Marcus stood in the middle of it all, barely breathing hard, holding her mother's amulet. "Is it over?" she asked quietly. Marcus looked around at the bodies, then nodded. "It's over." He walked over to her and gently placed the amulet around her neck. The broken chain had been roughly repaired with a piece of wire, but the amulet itself was undamaged. "How?" Zarathis asked, touching the familiar weight against her chest. "How did you do all this?" Marcus shrugged. "Training, experience, and the fact that they thought they were fighting a victim instead of a soldier." They heard the sound of footsteps in the corridor outside. Marcus immediately went alert, moving to put himself between Zarathis and the entrance. But the figures who appeared in the doorway weren't more gang members. They were other traders from the lower markets, aliens of a dozen different species who had followed the sounds of the fight. They stared at the scene inside the factory with expressions of amazement and something that might have been hope. "You actually did it," one of them whispered. "You actually beat them." Marcus looked around at the gathering crowd. "This was just the beginning," he said quietly. "Things are going to change around here." Word of what happened in the factory spread through Nexus Station like fire through dry grass. By the next morning, every trader in the lower markets knew the story. A human had single-handedly taken down 8 Krex gang members to recover a stolen amulet. More importantly, he had done it to help someone who wasn't even his own species. Marcus sat in the small medical clinic on level 6, letting a healer patch up the cuts and bruises from the fight. The doctor was a friendly Zilthian whose forearms made him very efficient at treating injuries. "You're lucky," the doctor said as he sealed a cut on Marcus's forehead. "The Krex could have done much worse damage." "They didn't get the chance," Marcus replied. Zarathis sat nearby, her mother's amulet safely around her neck once again. She had spent most of the night staring at it, trying to process everything that had happened. Her simple piece of family jewelry was apparently the key to finding a lost colony ship from her people's ancient exodus. "What are you going to do with the information in the amulet?" Marcus asked. "I don't know yet," Zarathis admitted. "Part of me wants to follow the star charts, see if we can really find the lost ship. But part of me is afraid of what we might discover." The clinic door opened and several aliens entered. Marcus tensed for a moment, but these weren't gang members. They were traders from the lower markets, the same ones who had watched the Krex push people around for years without doing anything to stop it. "We wanted to thank you," said a Bothan trader whose family ran a small food stall. "What you did last night, it gave us hope." "Hope for what?" Marcus asked. An elderly Twi'lek stepped forward. "Hope that things can change, that we don't have to live in fear anymore." More traders began to arrive, filling the small clinic. They came from dozens of different species, but they all had the same look in their eyes. For the first time in years, they believed that someone might actually stand up for them. "The gangs are regrouping," warned a nervous-looking Rhodian. "The Krex bosses are bringing in reinforcements from other levels. They're saying they're going to make an example of anyone who defies them." Marcus finished getting his injuries treated and stood up. "Let them come. But this time they won't be facing just one person." He looked around at the gathered traders. "If you're tired of paying protection money to thugs, if you're tired of watching them steal from your families, then it's time to do something about it." "What can we do?" asked the Bothan. "We're not fighters. You don't have to be," Marcus replied. "But you can support each other. You can share information. You can refuse to cooperate with the gangs when they come for their payments." An older human merchant, one of the few others of Marcus's species on the station, pushed through the crowd. "I'm Captain Sarah Reynolds, Merchant Marine. I heard what you did down there, son." "I'm impressed," Marcus nodded respectfully. "Captain." I've got a proposition for you, Reynolds continued. My shipping company has been looking for someone to handle security for our operations in the outer systems. Someone who isn't afraid to get their hands dirty when necessary. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure I'm ready to leave the station yet, Marcus said. Glancing at Zarathus, Captain Reynolds smiled. Who said anything about leaving? I'm talking about establishing a permanent security presence here. A protection compact for the independent traders. Someone they can call when the gangs come around. The idea sent a murmur of excitement through the gathered traders. A few of them started talking quickly among themselves in their own languages. It could work, the Twi'lek elder said thoughtfully. If we had someone to call, someone who wasn't afraid of the gangs. But it can't just be one person, Zarathus added, speaking up for the first time. Marcus can't fight every gang on the station by himself. He won't have to, Captain Reynolds said. I can bring in other humans, experienced security personnel who know how to handle situations like this. We set up a proper organization, with real backing and real resources. Marcus considered this. What about the station authorities? They're not going to like having an independent security force operating in their territory. The station authorities don't care what happens in the lower levels as long as it doesn't interfere with trade, Reynolds replied. And protecting independent traders is good for trade. They'll look the other way as long as we keep things professional. Over the next few days, the changes began to take hold. Captain Reynolds was as good as her word, bringing in a team of human security specialists who set up shop in an abandoned warehouse on level 8. They called themselves the Independent Traders Protection Compact, and their message was simple. Attack one trader under their protection, and you'd have to deal with all of them. The gangs tried to test the new arrangement several times. The first group of Kreks who tried to shake down a Bothan fruit vendor found themselves facing 3 armed humans in tactical gear. The second group, who attempted to rob a Zilthian electronics dealer, discovered that their escape route had been blocked by more humans who seemed to know exactly where they would run. After a week of failed attempts, the gangs began to realize that the rules had changed. The independent traders were no longer easy targets. Marcus found himself in an unexpected position. The other traders looked to him as their protector, but he had never wanted to be anyone's leader. He was just a cargo hauler who had decided to help someone in trouble. You started something important here, Zarathus told him as they sat in her family's stall, watching the busy market around them. The other traders moved with more confidence now, no longer constantly looking over their shoulders for gang members. I just did what was right, Marcus said. That's exactly what made it important. Zarathus touched the amulet around her neck. I've been thinking about what the Vorthon said about the lost colony ship. I want to find it. Marcus looked at her. That's going to be dangerous. The information in that amulet is valuable to a lot of people, and not all of them are going to be as nice as we are. I know. That's why I want you to come with me. Zarathus met his eyes. You said I was under your protection. Does that offer have an expiration date? Marcus smiled, the first genuinely warm expression she had seen from him. No, it doesn't. But are you sure you want to spend your time chasing legends across the galaxy? It's not just a legend anymore. It's real, and it's part of my people's history. Someone should find it, and I'd rather it be us than some crime syndicate. Captain Reynolds appeared at their stall, looking pleased with herself. The compact is officially operational, she announced. We've got contracts with 47 independent traders, and the station authorities have given us unofficial approval to operate. What about the major crime families? Marcus asked. They're not happy, but they're not stupid either. They know that direct confrontation with us would hurt their business more than it would help. They'll probably try to find other ways to make money. Marcus nodded. Good. That gives us time to get established. Actually, Reynolds continued, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Zarathus here has told me about the information in her amulet. I think the compact might be interested in backing an expedition to find that lost ship. Why? Zarathus asked. Because finding a lost colony ship would make the Independent Traders Protection Compact famous throughout the galaxy. That kind of reputation would bring in more clients, more resources, and more ability to protect people like you. Marcus considered this. It would also bring in more attention from people who might want to take the ship for themselves. True, Reynolds admitted. But that's why we'd need good security for the expedition. Someone who knows how to handle threats and protect valuable assets. Marcus looked at Zarathus, who was smiling hopefully at him. Around them, the market buzzed with activity as traders who were no longer afraid to conduct their business openly. "All right," he said finally, "but we do this right. Proper planning, good equipment, and enough firepower to discourage anyone who might want to cause trouble." Zarathus practically glowed with excitement. "Really? You'll help me find my people's lost ship?" "I said you were under my protection," Marcus replied. "That means I go where you go." 3 weeks later, Marcus stood on the bridge of the merchant vessel New Horizon as it prepared to leave Nexus Station. Below in the cargo bay, Zarathus was excitedly going over the star charts from her mother's amulet with the ship's navigator. Captain Reynolds joined him at the window, watching the station recede into the distance. "You know, what you did down there changed more than just the lower markets," she said. "How so?" "Word is spreading to other stations, other systems. Independent traders are starting to organize, starting to demand better treatment. Some of them are calling it the Marcus Doctrine, the idea that everyone deserves protection regardless of species or status." Marcus shook his head. "I just helped one person get her property back." "Sometimes that's all it takes," Reynolds said. "One person willing to stand up and do what's right. The rest follows naturally." As the New Horizon jumped to hyperspace, beginning its journey to find a lost piece of Valari history, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed in just a few weeks. He had come to Nexus Station as a simple cargo hauler. Now he was part of something larger, something that might actually make a difference in the galaxy.